From Milwaukee's NPR, this is Capitol Notes. We break down the big political news affecting Wisconsin. I'm Chuck Quirmbach, filling in for Mayan Silver, speaking with J.R. Ross, editor of WisPolitics.com. Here's our latest conversation. Hi, J.R. Welcome to the Act 10 has been ruled upon. What's next edition of Capitol Notes?
Okay, great. Good to be here.
So again, last week, a Dane County judge basically threw out quite a bit or all of the Act 10 law restricting public sector bargaining in Wisconsin. Republicans have appealed the circuit court ruling. What do we know about what's coming up next for this?
Well, probably a lengthy appeals process, and the question becomes, when might the state Supreme Court hear it, and who on the court would hear that case? So first, let's back up. Judge Jacob Frost at Dane County struck down dozens of provisions in Act 10. Not everything that the unions had asked him to remove, but the vast majority. And the basic effect is it restores collective bargaining powers for most of the employees who lost them back in 2011. Now, almost immediately, Republican lawmakers went to the Second District Court of Appeals, based in Waukesha. There are 4 judges on that court, 3 are conservatives. You get a 3-judge panel to hear a case. It guarantees Republicans they're going to have a conservative majority for that appeal. It's their go-to court these days when they want to appeal something out of Dane County. Now, the option for the unions, though, is to ask the Supreme Court to take the appeal directly. They can do it's called a petition to bypass. Essentially argue, this case is so important, let's not waste time with these 3 judges hearing it. Let's go right to the top court in Wisconsin. So 1, will anybody make that move? 2, would the Supreme Court agree to it? Then 3, who's going to hear it?
Why wouldn't the entire state Supreme Court hear this case?
Well, Janet Protasiewicz, when she ran, she said she might, and I stress the word might, not hear an Act 10 suit because she signed a recall petition and protested the law. You have Brian Hagedorn, who is a conservative member of the court. He was part of the Walker administration that drafted Act 10 and put it into effect. So does he have a conflict of interest? Look, the rules of Wisconsin basically say it's up to each judge or justice to decide if they have a conflict. Now, there are standards that say you should recuse if A, B, and C, but ultimately it's for the judges to decide. I have yet to meet a judge or talk to one who said, you know what, I really can't be impartial. I'm compromised. They think of themselves as being people who could hear a case fairly, right? That's human nature. So I don't know what they will do when push comes to shove. I have seen justices step aside of cases if there's like a personal connection, like, their relative works at the law firm, that's before something like that. But it's a big question of who might hear it if it comes up soon. And then 2, we've got a race in the spring. Ann Walsh-Bradley, a liberal, is not seeking re-election. The Supreme Court usually I stress, here's oral arguments to like late spring-ish. If they don't get it by then, it will go the next term, which begins August 1st. And so the new justice, whoever wins that race in April, we expect it now to be Brad Schimmel, conservative, and Susan Crawford, liberal. They might be on the court. And how will that affect things? Would the balance change? Right now it's a 4-3 liberal majority. Could it go back to conservatives if Schimmel were to win? So lots of what-ifs right now or question marks about the appeal process, but we're nowhere near a final decision in this issue.
I was going to say, I'm thinking of the union members with whom I spoke, or you probably spoke as well, excited about this Dane County court ruling, but some guarded optimism as to when they might see what they think is more fair bargaining, and we don't know.
No, and the other question is, what will the rules be? What's it going to look like? I mean, remember, there were these contracts in place previously. A lot of them weren't renewed before Democrats lost control of the state capitol in 2010. That opened the door to Walker and Republicans doing Act 10 because there weren't contracts in place. So do you start from square one with these contracts? So if, you're bargaining for everything, do you try and use the last one you had as a benchmark? There's lots of things up in the air. The House process is going to work if this ruling stands.
Okay, well, we'll watch for that. Meanwhile, someone who has been sort of one of the architects for the Democrats' challenges to Act 10, challenges to conservative control of the state Supreme Court, architect of legislative redistricting, maybe some other things. Ben Wikler of the state Democratic Party is running for the national DNC chair. And again, that contest is not for 6-8 weeks. But what does Wikler have going for him, first of all?
Well, he's got endorsements from kind of across the spectrum right now. There's a group called the PCCC. I think got the right number of C's in there. They're a progressive group. They're endorsing Wikler. There's it's called the Third Way. It's more of a moderate Democratic group. He's got a lot of people who are from Wisconsin who are saying, hey, this guy's been great. But really, this race is a 450-person committee made up of national committee members. These are like the ultimate insiders, elected officials, state party chairs, state party vice chairs, committee members from each state. Somebody described it to me as the world's smallest city council race. What the person meant by that was you've got this very kind of select group of people who are voting for it. It's not like a statewide campaign, or it is like glad handing like all of these folks. And he's got competition. The state chair in Minnesota says he's got endorsements of 200 people already, 200 members of the committee. There are others who are still looking at it. So we're a ways away from kind of knowing what the field looks like for sure. And then two, where he is in the pecking order. But there are definitely some people who think that Wikler is what Democrats need nationally because of what he's built in Wisconsin.
But where has he fallen short? It's obvious that Kamala Harris did not win Wisconsin in November. Legislative control did not go to the Democrats quite yet. He's got a ways to go on that. Where has Mr. Wikler not quite delivered everything that he might want in Wisconsin?
Well, it shows that money doesn't fix everything. Wickler's been a phenomenal fundraiser, but money doesn't top environment. And it was definitely a pro-Trump environment in November. So, Wikler and his defenders will point to the fact that the nation shifted by like 6 points toward Trump in 24 from 2020. Wisconsin, however, saw a shift of 1.5 percentage points. That's in like one of the ultimate swing states. So they will argue, his backers, that, hey, here's a guy who helped engineer this turnout operation in Wisconsin that blunted the effect of the Trump wave, as some people have called it. But, the chair from Minnesota who's running, he said, look, Ben's not winning everything. He's kind of like a little dig at him about that because, Harris didn't win Wisconsin, because Mandela Barnes didn't win the Senate race in 2022 against Ron Johnson. I don't know that from my conversations that's necessarily Ben Wikler's fault, but a guy like the Minnesota is going, hey, we keep winning over here in Minnesota, and we've won more than they have in Wisconsin. Maybe I've got something that he doesn't. So we'll see how that kind of plays out and how the National Committee members feel about the record of Ben Wikler in Wisconsin.
Would it make a difference to the average Wisconsinite if Wikler becomes the national DNC chair, or is this sort of inside politics?
Oh, if you can walk down Water Street some Friday night and find me 25 people know Ben Wikler by first name, I'll be impressed. And I don't mean to be flippant about that, but this is the ultimate insider conversation, right? Because here's a state party chair. He's not an elected official. He's really known to insiders, but it's an insider crowd that is going to decide this race for DNC chair. For Wisconsinites, it's not going to change anything in their daily lives other than for state Democrats, if Wikler leaves, they've got to figure out how can they keep the money train rolling that he's built at the state party, because that money train has helped fund a lot of the successes they've seen, like Tony Evers winning re-election in 2022, like Democrats picking up seats in the legislature, especially in the Senate, the state Senate this past fall, despite a not great environment for them. Like Wikler has been a rainmaker when it comes to money, and that money funds the train that fueled their wins. So who do you find to replace him to help in that regard?
Partisan control of things like the governor's office and legislature do affect the people of Wisconsin.
Absolutely, that's my point, that he's more the behind-the-scenes guy to what you see at the ballot box. And that's going to be big because we look at the Supreme Court race in the spring. The state Democratic Party gave Portasewicz $10 million in 2023, roughly. We expect the 2025 race to be as expensive, if not more, than the 2023 one, which I tracked $56 million plus in spending in that race overall. It will probably top that because control of the court's up once again. It's at stake. So there's a lot of stuff going on financially. And Republicans I talked to hope Wikler leaves now. They would like him to be out the door as soon as possible to try to cut off that gravy train of money and make it more of a fair fight in their minds going forward. There's no denying that Wikler has done a better job building that financial operation the Republicans have. And look, Ben's got a perfect storm. He's got national contacts from his time at MoveOn.org, this big national progressive group. He's in a swing state, which is perpetually in the eye of the storm for state and federal elections. And he's got Tony Evers in the governor's office. It's just, you ask anybody in politics, it's easier to raise money when you have the governor's office. And Evers and Wikler have been a great team together. But it's a perfect storm. Like somebody told me one time, if Ben Wikler were the chair of the North Dakota Democratic Party, nobody know who he was. But he's got the right environment with the right background to be a success. Republicans, however, have not been able to match that operation. There are millionaires all over this country, and Democrats have figured out a way to get them to invest in Wisconsin. Republicans have really not been as good at that. And even Wikler leaving is not going to fix that problem for Republicans about how you get out-of-state donors to invest in the state, which is so important at so many levels.
Well, thanks, JR. Who says early December is a quiet time in politics?
Never. Always something going on.
That was J.R. Ross of WisPolitics.com speaking with me, WUWM's Chuck Quirmbach. Check out the Capitol Notes podcast wherever you get your podcasts.